Hey guys, Steve here at SKS Props, and today I'm going to show you how I built Stormbreaker. Alright, so like most costume slash prop builders, when Thor unveiled his new weapon, we knew that we must make this thing. And the biggest issue with that currently is that there are no good images on Google, and basically the best one out there is a leaked Hot Toys pic of one of the toys that's coming out, and it still is really hard to see. It doesn't have a lot of good detail. You can't really tell the scale of the entire thing. So a lot of this build is just purely artistic licensing. I just kind of guessed, and I had some trials and tribulations. I learned some stuff along the way, but I did complete the build. So without further ado, let's jump into making Stormbreaker. The first thing we need to do to bring this weapon to life is scale the axe head and the hammer head. Now I'm super lucky in the regards that my wife had these yoga blocks laying around, and I really like these. First off, they're extremely light, but it's two halves and already has this groove down the middle. I can take this over to the belt sander and actually extenuate this because the hammerhead has a deep groove that goes all the way down the two sides of it. Also, this is a perfect 6x6, so all I need to do is taper this direction and this direction and have it meet up with the rest of the axe head once I get that templated out. So let me draw that, we'll scale all this up, and then we'll move on to the belt sander. Once I have my basic foam pieces cut out, I use my template to determine where I need to grind the foam down on the belt sander. Like most of my projects, I prefer a double adhesive method for larger pieces. That includes using barge for the main portion of it and then using Bob Smith super glue around the exterior. After I glue the top of the hammer on, I measure out the exact distance to see how far I need to grind down the foam so all the facets match up at the top. Alright guys, so far we are progressing through our build of Stormbreaker. We have the axe head cut out of some 2-inch thick high density foam from TNT Cosplay Supply. This has been beveled down on the belt sander to give it a nice gradual profile and a decent curve to the blade edge. This has been the difficult one. This is the head of the hammer. And again, originally this was two yoga blocks that have been cut down and they've been sanded on the belt sander to get all these little facets to make sure that all the details line up. I've also added some additional 2-inch high density foam to the top of it as well, just to give it a little more robust, a little more weight to it. The foam back here is fairly light. And now we're going to go through and we're going to start adding all the detail spots in there. Now you guys know me, I'm not a big fan of seams, and so all of this has been cut so that when we add the detail lines in around the top and down through the sides here, all of those will be covered up, and so it'll have a nice seamless look. Once again, I template the basic design onto some Bristol board and then transfer that to 4mm craft foam for the top and the sides of the hammer. The same basic process is used for all the detailed pieces on the axe head, taking into account the slope for the blade section.
using multiple pieces of high-density foam to connect both the axe and hammer, making sure to leave enough room on the inside for the PVC pipe to fit snugly.
Alright, after about a day, we have Thor's axe and hammer flushed out, and we need to start thinking about the handle. Now, the handle is going to have a bunch of wood texture, and so to do that, again, I'm going to want to make almost all of that out of foam because I can really control how organic the whole thing looks. Now, to make the handle, much like Odin did in his, I'm glad that he brought it up. It is something I've done for years. It is a fantastic way to make melee weapon handles, is have a PVC base and then skin it or wrap it in foam. Now for this particular one, I went with a 3/4 inch pipe, which means that it is a 1 inch diameter on the outside. So the first thing that we're going to do is figure out exactly how long this pipe needs to be, and then I'm going to use my heat gun to put an S-curve into it. And then after that, we'll rough it up with some sandpaper and start adhering our foam directly to the pipe. Remember that if you are heating foam or PVC, the fumes that come off of this are very toxic, so make sure that you're wearing a respirator and are in a well-ventilated area. Alright, I think you guys can kind of see how I plan on achieving the organic look of this handle. We started off with some 3/4 inch PVC pipe. We skinned that with some 4mm foam, and I'm now going through and I'm bulking up parts of it using some additional scrap pieces that I had. And the way that I'm doing that is, alright, over the past year or so, I have a bunch of offcuts of 6mm and 8mm foam. I don't throw these away. I have a scrap bin for all of that. And I've been cutting these into interesting shapes, and I've been super gluing them on in kind of a wrapped fashion, so it looks like it's growing up the handle here. And I'm going to continue that process all the way to the top and then have them wrap around the hammer and the axe as well. Now once those are super glued on, I've been taking them to the Dremel. I'm kind of beveling them down and making everything a little more cohesive, just so it doesn't look like I've got these really crazy strands that are just sticking out. It looks more like it's growing all together. So I still have a bunch of the handle to do, so let's continue. Alright, so here we have the base of the handle, and it's coming together pretty good. I'm really happy with how the wood look is turning out. Of course, again, that is layering little bits of foam and then sanding those down with the Dremel to just kind of make them all look as though they're forming into each other. And I've started to even do this kind of organic wrap up the side, so it's not just going straight up, it's actually twisting around. TNT Cosplay now sells 24-inch foam dowels, and what I plan on doing is actually adhering these, and then just like the bottom, forming them to look like the same organic wood and then tying them down into the rest of the handle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these, I'm going to cut a little bit off of the back side of them so that they'll sit a little bit more flush, and then we're going to start detailing these out.
I'm using a really coarse fibrous rope to simulate the vines that are going up the handle. These will be wrapped around and then superglued into place. I glued on some plastic vines that I found at Michael's. This helped break up the texture and give it an extra little bit of detail to the handle.
Alright, I want to talk about something, in my opinion, that's very important. And if you notice in front of me, my axe that was all together in the previous scene is now in a bunch of pieces. And that's because I was not happy with how the scaling was and how it was turning out. I know some of you were probably looking at it and being like, oh my god, I can't believe you did that. Don't be afraid to fail at anything, and don't be afraid then to start over with a better plan. There were parts of this that were really starting to bother me. Again, the biggest issue with this is that there are no references online except for an action figure and one or two poses, and so I'm having a very difficult time getting the scaling properly. And so I noticed that a lot of people that have been making this weapon so far have been making it too small. Well, I had actually gone the opposite direction. I made mine a little too big. And so what I have done is I took the hammer, which end to end is still fine. I cut off about 1 inch of it on the axe portion. Most of it, again, still pretty much fine. Cut off a little bit on the top and the bottom just to kind of scale it a little bit better. And then the handle itself. The handle, I thought personally that it was a little too long. It's hard again to see how big it truly is. But what this did is this allowed me to now put a 3/4 inch coupler in there so that I can now take this weapon apart, use it in my suitcase, take it around to conventions, let other people see it. I don't have a 4-foot monstrosity that I can't take apart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to still cover this with the same bark texture here. The rope will come down and the rope will stop right here. So again, there will be no seam. It'll be able to break apart easily, and then this section with the hammer and with the axe head, I've measured my suitcase, and both of those will fit in there properly. So again, the biggest thing that I just want to say here is that even though I was near the finish line, I mean, I could almost see this thing done, I sat there and I was looking at it, and I was just like, nope, not good enough. And so I ripped it all apart. The other thing that allowed me to do too, I was not happy with how these transitions at the top and the bottom were coming out, so I completely shaved them off. I'm going to redo those. I'm going to reassemble this whole thing, and then we're going to move on to painting. But I'm a lot happier with the scaling, how this is all going now. I can't wait to see it completed, so let's continue this build.
I detailed all the features on the axe head with some 2mm craft foam. Further details on the hammerhead were also made out of 2mm craft foam that was cut out and glued into place.
Alright guys, we have Stormbreaker assembled, and finally with a base coat on there. Now before I did the base coat, I of course did 2 to 3 coats of Plasti Dip, depending on where it was located at. I did about 2 coats up here on the metal section of it, but I did about 3 coats down here on the handle. And the reason is the rope that I'd use has a lot of stringy, viney stuff that I really like. It gives that whole organic feel to it. But I wanted to make sure that they're all thoroughly coated, so I made sure that all of this organic bark type material got a good 3 coats of Plasti Dip before I did the paint process on top. Now after that, I did the Valspar. This is the made for plastic brown. Any of this should be fine. Again, this is just a base coat. We're going to hand paint on top of this all the details we want. And then for the metallic section, just like the PVC chainmail, I use the Rust-Oleum Universal Series. This is the flat antique nickel. And from there, we are going to start doing our hand painting with Liquitex heavy body acrylics. This is, of course, my favorite part of the whole thing. This is where you get to bring your prop to life. So at this point, let's start hand painting. Let's finish this thing up.
To start the hand painting process, I'm using Liquitex Heavy Body Series Mars Black and a 1-inch mop brush to put on a heavy wash. A second wash is applied with less water and more pigment. This will help us start to define highlights and shadows. Using a 1/2-inch filbert brush, I'm applying the Mars Black in the spots that will be the deepest recesses and the darkest shadows. Using a 1/2-inch mop brush, we will now start to address the highlight areas. In this case, we're applying Liquitex Heavy Body Acrylics Burnt Sienna. We're doing this in a dry brush technique, but very heavy-handed. After the first layer has completely dried, we'll start to add some raw sienna into our burnt sienna. This will lighten it, and we'll start to pick out specific spots to highlight on the bark. It's now time to paint the metal on this piece, and to do that we're using Liquitex Heavy Body Series Iridescent Rich Silver, and we're using that with no water, picking out only the highlighted areas.
Alright guys, we have our completed weapon, Stormbreaker, which almost broke me. This is by far one of the toughest builds I've ever had to do, purely based on the fact that there is no good reference material online. I mean, everyone that I know that has built one of these things has based it off of an action figure. Now that being said, there's a lot of artistic licensing going on here, so is it 100%? Nope. Is it good enough for cosplay? Sure is. And some victories to take away from it. I absolutely love the organic look of the bark that is going on in the handle here. I love the fact that I made it so that it can break down and go into luggage, so it can go to different conventions across the country. I love the fact that it's foam. You know, it weighs next to nothing. It is con safe. That's very, very important nowadays. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to share it online with friends and family, and of course, fans of Marvel. And if you liked what I did, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. And be sure to swing back by again, because there's lots more tips and tutorials headed your way. So until next time, thank you very much.